Oak Haven, Illinois. The engagement party is a cage disguised as a celebration. My name is Vanessa Greene, and I am standing in the center of the room holding my own humiliation in a cream-colored box. The air smells of lilies and expensive lies as my father clears his throat, ready to tell 50 guests that I am a failure, a mistake to be erased from the family blueprint. He thinks I am the daughter who ran away broken and alone. He doesn't know about the secret marriage I've kept for 7 months, or the evidence I've gathered to prove he tried to destroy it. He thinks he's holding the gavel, but tonight I'm holding the match. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. The cream-colored box feels heavier than cardstock has any right to be. It sits in my palms, sleek and tasteful, with the words, "For Vanessa," embossed in gold script that matches the napkins, the tablecloths, and the terrifyingly perfect floral arrangements my mother spent 3 months curating. I am standing in the center of the living room where I learned to walk, surrounded by 50 of the most influential people in our small Midwestern town, and my face is burning hot enough to singe my eyelashes. I stare down at the contents of the box, hoping I'm hallucinating. I'm not. Nestled inside isn't a bracelet or a keepsake for being a bridesmaid. It is a printed gift certificate for a premium membership to an app called Last Chance Love, specifically designed for women over 30 fearing spinsterhood. Beneath it lies a self-help book titled Finding Peace When You Die Alone. I am 29. I am a successful business owner. And right now, I feel like I am 12 years old again, shrinking under the weight of a joke I wasn't in on. Around me, the laughter starts as a ripple and swells into a wave. My brother Caleb, the guest of honor, is chuckling into his champagne flute, looking anywhere but at me. My mother offers a tight, pained smile that says, "Just take it, Vanessa, don't make a scene." But the loudest laugh comes from the man standing by the fireplace. My father, Douglas Greene, clears his throat, the sound cutting through the chatter like a gavel strike. He raises a hand, signaling for silence, his face flushed with the benevolent glow of a man entertaining his subjects. "Now that Nessie has her little care package," he booms, his voice projecting with the practiced ease of a church elder, "I'd like to say a few words about failure and about family." The room goes quiet, eyes fixed on him. I grip the box so hard the corners dig into my skin. Before he delivers the punchline that will dismantle me, my mind snaps back, rewinding through the years, to find the exact moment I became the punchline. In Oak Haven, you couldn't drive 2 miles without seeing the Green name. It was on the side of the heavy-duty trucks rumbling down Main Street, on the sponsorship banners at the high school football stadium, and etched into the cornerstone of the new Baptist church annex. My father didn't just run a construction company. He built the town's identity. To the public, Douglas Greene was the embodiment of the American dream, hard-working, charitable, a pillar of faith who donated turkeys at Thanksgiving and roof repairs after storms. But inside our sprawling colonial house, the architecture was different. In private, my father was an inspector who never passed a foundation. He was exacting and image-obsessed, managing our family like a high-stakes project where every flaw had to be hidden or demolished. Caleb was the blueprint for success. He was the son who played quarterback, the son who went to business school, the son groomed to inherit the empire. I was the zoning error. I was quiet, creative, and preferred dirt under my fingernails to socializing at the country club. My mother, Linda, coped by becoming a professional smoother of surfaces. Her entire personality was a layer of spackle applied to cracks in the drywall. Her mantra, always the same: be grateful. Vanessa. Don't threaten your father's blood pressure. I remember being 16, sitting at the kitchen island with a sketchbook full of drafting designs. I had spent weeks redesigning our backyard, calculating sun exposure for native perennials, and sketching a tiered patio system. I was so proud of it. I thought finally I was speaking his language. I slid the sketchbook across the granite toward him while he drank his coffee. He flipped through the pages, his face blank. I waited for him to critique the lines or the scale. Instead, he chuckled, closed the book, and slid it back until it teetered on the edge of the counter. "It's cute, Ness," he said, not looking at me. But you're not the future of this family. Your background. Don't make us regret having you. That word background planted a seed of shame that grew faster than any weed. It taught me that my role was to remain unseen unless I was being useful. So I left. I went to college out of state, studied landscape architecture, and built a life that had nothing to do with concrete or public image. I started my own design firm in the city. I made friends who loved me for my jagged edges. But every time I called home to share a win, a new contract, a magazine feature, my father trivialized it. Playing with flowers isn't a career, he'd say. The message was consistent success, away from his control, was a form of abandonment. I stayed away for a long time. I built a modest, beautiful life that they knew nothing about. I only came back this weekend because Caleb is getting engaged, and a foolish, childish part of me thought that maybe enough time had passed. I thought if I showed up polished and professional, I could finally be seen as more than just a disappointment. I thought I could repair the foundation. I was wrong. The memory dissolves, and I am back in the living room, the smell of expensive cologne and pot roast filling my lungs. My father steps toward me, reaching out to pluck the book from the box in my hands. He holds it up for the guests to see, grinning like a shark. Honestly, Ness, he says, his voice dropping to a register that sounds startlingly sincere, if we could go back and redesign our life, you're the piece we'd erase. We poured everything into this family, and you gave us nothing back. The room tilts. The floor feels like it's dropping out from under me. He isn't just roasting me. He is telling the truth. He is looking at his adult daughter and telling a room full of people that I am a mistake he wishes he could correct. The humiliation is cold and absolute, but beneath it something else snaps into place. A fracture. I look at the man who built this town, and for the first time, I don't feel the urge to shrink. I feel the urge to burn the blueprints. The laughter following my father's comment doesn't stop. It hangs in the air, thick and suffocating like humidity before a storm. The sounds of the party, clinking champagne flutes, the murmur of agreement, the scraping of silverware seem to drift away from me, muffled by the rushing blood in my ears. I feel a strange floating sensation, a dissociation that pulls me back from my own body. I look desperately at Caleb, silently begging him to say something, to tell Dad that joking about erasing his sister goes too far. But Caleb just stares into the amber liquid of his drink, his jaw tight, conditioned from birth never to challenge the patriarch. My mother Linda leans in close, her hand fluttering nervously to my arm. He doesn't mean it, Vanessa, she whispers, her voice a frantic hiss meant only for me. He's just stressed about the merger, don't take it to heart. She is doing what she always does, minimizing the damage, sweeping the glass shards under the rug so no one cuts their feet, ignoring the fact that I am already bleeding. She straightens up, pasting a bright, fake smile on her face as she addresses the nearby guests, trying to pivot the conversation back to safe territory. You know how Vanessa is, she says, her tone light and breezy. Always so independent. We just worry about her being all alone in the city. Vanessa, sweetheart, when are you finally going to settle down? You've sacrificed having a real family for your plants and your clients, but surely there's an expiration date on that lifestyle. Something inside me, a tension wire that has been pulled taut for 29 years, finally snaps. I am done being the cautionary tale. I am done being the prop they use to make themselves look benevolent. I place the cruel gift box on the side table, my movements calm and precise. I'm not single, I say. I don't shout it. I don't need to. My voice is steady, dropping into the silence like a stone into a deep well. I've been married for 7 months. The silence that follows is absolute. Forks pause halfway to mouths. The guests exchange confused glances. My father, however, doesn't look confused. He throws his head back and laughs, a harsh barking sound. Oh, here we go, he announces to the room. Another dramatic stunt. Anything to get the attention back on yourself, right, Ness? His reaction isn't shock that he missed his daughter's wedding. It is outrage that I would embarrass the brand. But I am remembering a different day, a day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life. I met Ethan Cole 2 years ago at a community garden project. He was a contractor and IT specialist, a man with calloused hands and a quiet, steady intelligence that grounded me instantly. He didn't care about the Green family name or my father's empire. He loved that I could name every tree in the park. He respected my work. We planned our wedding in a small meadow just outside the city. It was everything my childhood home wasn't: intimate, wild, honest. There were food trucks instead of caterers, wildflowers instead of imported roses, and friends who actually knew us. I had sent the invitations 3 months in advance. I included handwritten letters to Mom, Dad, and Caleb, pouring my heart out, telling them that despite our differences, I wanted them there. I wanted them to meet the man who made me happy. On the day of the wedding, I stood in my dress watching the gravel driveway. I had reserved 3 chairs in the front row, placing name cards on them with my own hand. I waited until the sun began to dip low, telling myself there was a traffic jam, an emergency, a mix-up. But the driveway remained empty. I walked down the aisle to Ethan with tears in my eyes, trying to focus on his love, but the sight of those 3 empty chairs felt like a physical blow. When I called home the next day, heartbroken, my mother answered. Her voice was shaky, rehearsed. "We never got anything, honey," she had said. "Are you sure you mailed them? You know how mail gets lost." Later, my father sent a text, not an apology, but a judgment. Maybe God was telling us this marriage wasn't right. We couldn't attend something thrown together so carelessly. I had tried to believe them. I had tried to believe it was just a tragic misunderstanding. But standing in this living room, watching the sneer on my father's face, the fog lifts. "If you were married, you'd have told your family," Doug says, projecting his voice so the back of the room can hear. "Parents don't just get erased like that, Vanessa. It's cruel." The hypocrisy hits me like a physical slap. He is accusing me of the very thing he did to me. "If there was a wedding, Ness," Caleb chimes in, finally looking up, his voice thick with forced incredulity. "Why didn't you at least send a text? You can't blame us for not being there if you never invited us." "We never saw an invitation, sweetheart," my mother adds, shaking her head sadly at the guests playing the victim perfectly. "You know your father would have walked you down the aisle." My heart hammers against my ribs. They are rewriting history in real time. They are gaslighting me in front of everyone I grew up with, united in a lie to protect their image as the perfect family. If I argue, I look crazy. If I stay silent, I accept their version of reality. I look directly at Douglas Green. The fear I've carried since childhood is still there, but it's being overtaken by a cold, hard resolve. I can prove everything. I say. My voice is soft, but it carries. My father's eyes narrow. The jovial mask slips for a fraction of a second, revealing the tyrant underneath. "You don't have anything," he sneers. "You were always too weak to stand on your own." He's wrong. I think the realization's settling in my chest like iron. I've been building something for months, and tonight he's the one who's ambushed. My father calls me weak, but he forgets that I design systems for a living. I understand drainage, I understand root structures, and I understand that when a foundation is rotting, the signs are always there if you know where to look. He assumes my silence over the last 8 months was submission. He is wrong. It was construction. The building process began 3 weeks after my wedding, when the silence from my family had turned from painful to suspicious. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was mechanically wrong with the narrative they were feeding me. I logged into my FedEx account, pulling up the history for the 3 heavy cream-colored envelopes I had mailed. Status delivered, signed for by L. Miller, my father's longtime office assistant at the business address, and D. Green at the house. They hadn't been lost in the mail. They had been received, held, and discarded. But confirmation numbers aren't a story, and I needed the story. The catalyst came from a distant cousin, Sarah, who messaged me on social media to ask why I had eloped without telling anyone. When I pressed her, she admitted, "Your dad told the family you ran off with some guy and didn't want them there. He said you were ashamed of us. We all felt so sorry for him, Ness." That was the moment the sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Doug hadn't just ignored my wedding, he had rewritten it. He had cast me as the villain and himself as the wounded patient patriarch. I almost spiraled then, but Ethan stopped me. "You don't deserve to be erased, Vanessa," he had told me, his voice low and firm. "You deserve the truth. And if they won't give it to you, we take it." Ethan is an IT specialist, a man who sees the world in data streams and security protocols. Together, we stopped asking for answers and started an investigation. We went to Oak Haven on a Tuesday when I knew my parents would be at their weekly prayer breakfast. We didn't go to the house. We went to the neighbors across the street, the Millers, who have a publicly facing Ring camera that captures the street view of my parents' porch. I used to babysit their kids. I told them I thought a package of mine had been stolen off the porch months ago and asked if they still had the cloud footage. They did. Watching the footage was like watching a car crash in slow motion. The timestamp was 2 days after I mailed the invites. In the grainy video, a delivery driver drops the distinctive blue envelope on the porch. 10 minutes later, my father steps out. He doesn't look at the return address with curiosity. He doesn't take it inside to show Mom. He picks it up, walks to his truck, and tosses it into the bed of the pickup like it's a piece of scrap drywall. He drove it to the dump or the office shredder, I'll never know which, but the intent was clear. He intercepted the communication lines to ensure the war went his way. But the physical sabotage was only the framing. The interior work was done digitally. Ethan helped me pull metadata from the family email server, a server Caleb had given me access to years ago, to upload holiday photos which they never revoked. What we found in the sent folder made me physically ill. There was an email from Doug to the church elder board dated a week before my wedding. The subject line, prayer request for Vanessa. The body read, "Please pray for us. Vanessa has chosen to exclude us from her rushed wedding ceremony. We are heartbroken that she continues to threaten our family unity, but we are giving her space." It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He used the community's piety to cement his own victimhood. Then there was the group text to his poker buddies, screen-capped by my cousin, where he joked, "She sacrificed her family for some backyard wedding with a stranger. She's choosing weeds over blood." "If they're willing to erase you," Ethan had said, looking at the glowing screen of his laptop, "they're willing to do that to anyone who doesn't fit the picture. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who buys the lie." We decided then that a private confrontation wouldn't work. Doug would just deny it, gaslight me, and spin it to Caleb and Mom later. To break his power, we had to do it where he lived, in the public eye. We had to do it at the engagement party. I established a strict moral line for myself. I would not fabricate a single thing. I wouldn't edit the footage or doctor the emails. I would simply show the community the raw materials of Douglas Greene's character. Ethan set up the technical side. He's parked in the rental car down the street right now, connected to the house's smart TV system via a guest permission Caleb unknowingly granted me when I asked about the Wi-Fi password earlier. I have a folder on my phone labeled Blueprints. It's ready to cast. Back in the present, the room is still staring at me, waiting for me to crumble under Dad's insult. Instead, I take a breath. "I'm going to help with the slideshow," I say, my voice oddly calm. "I think the HDMI input is glitching." "Leave it alone, Vanessa," Caleb snaps, but I'm already moving. I walk past my mother, past the frozen guests, and toward the massive flat-screen TV above the fireplace. I hold my phone like a detonator. My father thinks he is the architect of this family, the one who decides where the walls go and who gets shut out. But tonight, he is going to see what happens when the foundation he built on lies finally cracks. The room has gone quiet, but it's a confused, restless quiet, the kind you feel before a tornado siren goes off. Caleb's fiancée is looking at me with wide, expectant eyes, thinking I'm about to show a montage of baby photos. I stand by the television, my fingers trembling slightly against the cool plastic of the remote, but my voice is steady. Ethan is out there in the dark, connected and waiting. I take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of my mother's expensive lilies, and the stale air of a house that has suffocated me for decades. I want to share a different kind of story about this family, I announce, one that didn't make it into the newsletter. I tap the screen of my phone. The massive TV behind me flickers the happy engagement graphic vanishing. In its place, a high-resolution image appears. It's a digital scan of a FedEx delivery confirmation. The date is stamped clearly August 14th, a full month before my wedding. In the signature box is the unmistakable jagged scrawl of Douglas Greene. "This is a delivery receipt for a package sent to this address," I say, pointing to the screen. "Signed for by my father." Doug scoffs, waving a hand dismissively. "That doesn't prove anything, Vanessa. I sign for packages at the house and the office every single day. You're grasping at straws." "Maybe," I say softly, "but most packages don't have this on the label." I swipe. The image changes to a zoomed-in photo of the shipping label I had printed that day. The text is bold and impossible to miss. "To Douglas and Linda Greene, from Vanessa and Ethan Cole. Contains wedding invitation." A murmur ripples through the crowd. I see the church deacon squinting at the screen, his lips moving as he reads the text. The excuse of lost mail just evaporated. But I'm not done. "You said you never saw it," I say to my father, who is now standing rigid, his face turning a mottled red. "You said I erased you. But the camera across the street tells a different story." I signal Ethan. The video plays. It's the grainy ring footage from the Miller's porch. The timestamp matches the receipt. On screen, everyone watches Douglas Greene step out the front door, bend down, and pick up the blue envelope. He doesn't open it. He doesn't call for his wife. He walks to his truck and tosses it into the bed with a casual, dismissive flick of his wrist, like he's discarding a fast food wrapper. Parents are supposed to protect their children. I say, my voiceover live in the room, contrasting with the silence on the screen. That day, I felt like trash, and I didn't know why. Now I do. Doug steps forward, his control fracturing. He isn't acting like the benevolent elder anymore. He is the cornered animal. "You don't understand," he shouts, his voice booming over the whispers. "You don't understand what I sacrificed for this family, for your brother. You were always extra, a complication. We did what we had to do to keep this family on track. If I could erase those invitations, I'd do it again." The room gasps. He didn't just defend himself, he confirmed it. He admitted out loud that he actively erased my wedding to protect his narrative. "And it wasn't just me you lied to," I continue, relentless now. "You lied to the people who trust you." The screen changes again. This time it's the email to the church elders. The text looms large. "Vanessa has chosen to exclude us. Pray for us as our daughter continues to threaten our unity." Then the group texts to his friends. "She's choosing weeds over family." The reaction is immediate. The elders, men who have prayed beside my father for 20 years, look at him with open shock. The neighbor whose wife I helped with garden design covers her mouth. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. It's a betrayal of the community values Doug claimed to embody. He used their faith to weaponize his lies. Doug realizes he's losing the room. He steps toward me, closing the distance, his voice dropping to a menacing growl that I remember from my childhood, the voice that used to make me small. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" he hisses, eyes wild. "You think these people will take your side over mine? I built this place, Vanessa. I own half this town. I can erase you for good." A flicker of the old fear sparks in my chest, the instinct to apologize and run. But I look at the evidence on the screen, the proof of my own reality, and the fear dies. "You already tried to erase me," I tell him loud enough for the back row to hear. "You ambushed my wedding with silence. You sacrificed your daughter for your ego. I'm not here to ask for your love anymore, Dad. I'm here to tell the truth." I look around the room, meeting the eyes of the stunned guests. "All of this evidence is backed up," I say clearly. "It's legally obtained. If any more lies are spread about me or my husband, copies go directly to the state licensing board and the church elder council. I am done being your secret." The turning point hits the room like a physical weight. One of my father's longest-serving site managers stands up, shakes his head and quietly says, "I can't be part of this, Doug." He walks out. An elder steps forward, his face grim. "Douglas, I think we need to have a meeting about your position on the council. Immediately." But the final blow comes from the side. Caleb, the golden child, looks from the screen to our father. He looks sick. "Did you really throw them away?" he asks, his voice cracking. "Did you lie to me about Ness?" Doug opens his mouth to deflect, to blame me, but he stops. He has no ground left to stand on. His silence is the loudest confession of the night. I turn off the TV. The screen goes black, leaving only the reflection of a broken family. I walk over to the small table between us, pull my house key and the old green construction keychain from my purse, and set them down with a metallic clatter. "You don't get to threaten me with losing this family anymore," I tell him, looking him dead in the eye. "You already lost me." The party doesn't end, it fractures. As I step away from the table, the perfectly curated atmosphere of the Greene household disintegrates. A few relatives rush toward Doug and Linda, murmuring consolations, their eyes darting nervously toward me, as if I might pull another digital weapon from my purse. Others, the ones who saw the emails and understood the depth of the deception, are slipping out the side doors, grabbing their coats in silence. Caleb hasn't moved. He sits on the arm of the sofa, staring at the blank television screen, his fiancée crying quietly beside him. My mother intercepts me before I can reach the foyer. Her fingers clamp around my forearm with a strength that surprises me. Her face is pale, her makeup streaked. "Vanessa, please," she begs, her voice a ragged whisper. "We can fix this. Just sit down. Don't leave like this. Don't do anything else that will destroy your father." I look down at her hand on my arm, the same hand that smoothed over every insult, every rejection, every moment of neglect for 29 years. She still thinks the problem is my reaction, not their actions. Gently but firmly, I pry her fingers off my skin. "He already destroyed what we had, Mom," I say. "I'm just refusing to lie about it now." I turn to the door, my hand reaching for the brass handle. Behind me, my father finds his voice. It is raw, stripped of its polished church elder cadence. "If you walk out that door," he bellows, the sound echoing off the high ceilings, "don't bother coming back, you hear me? You're no daughter of mine." I pause. For my entire life, that sentence was the monster in the closet. It was the threat that kept me in line, the fear that made me swallow my pride and shrink myself to fit their blueprint. But standing here now, hearing the words actually spoken, I realize the monster has no teeth. The fear is gone, replaced by a profound, quiet relief. I turn back one last time. "You're my father by blood, Doug," I say, my voice steady enough to cut through the room. "But you stopped being my parent the day you chose to erase me." I push the heavy oak door open and step out into the cold Midwestern night. The air bites at my cheeks, sharp and clean. Ethan is waiting by the car, the engine idling, sending plumes of white exhaust into the dark. He sees my face, steps out, and pulls me into his chest. "You did it," he whispers into my hair. I bury my face in his jacket, smelling sawdust and laundry detergent, and finally I let myself cry. I don't weep because I lost them. I weep for the little girl who spent so many years believing she had to sacrifice her own happiness just to be tolerated. I weep because she is finally free. In the weeks that follow, the ripples of that night spread through Oakhaven. My father isn't ruined, men, like Douglas Greene rarely are completely, but the untouchable veneer is gone. Contracts for the new municipal center are put on hold, pending an ethics review by the town council. He steps down from the elder board for personal reasons. It's a slow, grinding accountability. My phone buzzes with messages, but not the hateful ones I expected. Old neighbors reach out apologizing for believing Doug's version of events. A teenager from the church youth group sends me a DM. "Thank you for standing up to him. My dad is the same way. I thought I was crazy until I saw you do that." Reading it, I realized that the truth didn't just free me. It cracked the door open for others trapped in the same dark rooms. 2 months later, on New Year's Eve, the air in our city apartment courtyard is thick with the smell of grilled skewers and the sound of laughter. It's a small gathering: Ethan's co-workers, a few of my clients who have become close friends, and my cousin Sarah. It is a family built not on blood obligation, but on selection. When the gate latch clicks, I look up to see Caleb standing there. He looks unsure, holding a six-pack of beer like a peace offering. He looks less perfect than I've ever seen him, his shoulders slumped, the golden child shine dimmed by reality. He walks over to me, avoiding Ethan's protective gaze. "I should have defended you," he says quietly. "Years ago, not just at the party. You were never the problem, Ness." It isn't a magical fix, but it's a start. We stand there watching the smoke rise from the grill, two siblings finally standing on level ground. Later that night, after the guests leave and the fireworks start popping over the skyline, I take out my phone. I open the contact for Dad, scroll to the bottom, and hit block. Then I do the same for the parents' group chat. I am setting a boundary that is as permanent as a retaining wall. Any future contact will require real accountability, not guilt. I walk out to the community garden plot I helped design down the street. The winter beds are dormant, sleeping under a layer of mulch. I kneel in the soil, the cold seeping into my jeans, and check the tag on a small perennial sapling I planted last week. It's small, ordinary, but undeniably alive. Ethan comes up behind me, slipping his arm around my shoulders as the city lights flare in the distance. My parents tried to erase me. They tried to ambush my future and threaten me back into their shadow. But I learned something they never did. You don't owe loyalty to the people who burn you down. You owe loyalty to the part of you that survives and decides what grows next. And with that final choice, Vanessa Greene chose the garden she had cultivated over the broken blueprints of her childhood. Let us know what you thought of Vanessa's confrontation in the comments below. We read every single one of your thoughts on standing your ground. If you want more stories of justice, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Hour. We'll see you next time.